Warning. The following episode contains spoilers about the film Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon. It also contains brief but intense spoilers about Cabin in the Woods and The Happening. We should also note that this is not Citizen Kane, because it's Marianne. It is very her-centric. Welcome to Marianne's Macabre Movie Review.
Hello, everybody. We are here for Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon. We have with us today John DeQuilla.
Hi there, everybody. How's it going?
Amanda Iman.
Hello.
J. Keith Jackson.
Close enough.
And me, Marianne. And we watched this mockumentary. What would you call it?
It was a mock-mockumentary.
It
Okay.
toes the line
Yeah.
of it.
I'd call it a straight-up homage, a clever homage to the slasher genre.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, well, we haven't, I don't know if we want to get into that just yet, but.
So what we're going to do to start out with is we're going to go 2 minutes, each person uninterrupted, just like book club, where we talk about what we like, what we didn't like, just general impressions. Then we'll get into it, and then we'll say, after everyone's done their thing, then we'll just dive in. I liked it, I didn't like it, blah, 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 blah.
I can dig
Okay,
those.
why don't you start?
Me? Oh, man. Rise of Leslie Vernon, Behind the Mask. This is one I have not seen in several years. It was really nice to revisit it. I remember after the first time watching it back in 2006, 2007, it struck me that it was a very clever piece of work. Not clever where it was cute and winking at the camera going, nudge, nudge, you like that? But more in a way that it knew its material, it knew the tropes, and it played with them. Watched again a couple years ago. That was more of a late night hazy affair where I wasn't really analyzing it. But getting a chance to watch through it this time and really looking at scenes and themes that stuck out to me, it really did struck me, like I just said earlier, that's how much of a really homage this was, not just to the serial killer film genre, but to all the salient cultural points and even the morality tale lying within. This is pretty deep for a silly movie.
Yeah.
It's very funny, very clever. I would recommend it to everybody, but if you're willing to peel back layers and you start thinking about your social mores from back when slashers started becoming a thing, and you pick apart some of the lines here, there's a lot going on in this one, to the point where I would argue with anyone who calls this a movie that is subverting tropes, because, man, everything in this movie reinforces the slasher worldview. Mm-hmm. From the subtext of certain lines to little throwaway gags. I guess I'll go into more later as we discuss this thing. But what impressed me about this movie is A, laugh out loud funny, B, some quality gore, decent filmmaking, and...
Amanda's like, oh.
Nothing wrong with a quality gore. If you're going to have gore, it must be quality. We will have no bargain bin gore around here. But just overall, what a cohesive film world it put together in its hour-and-a-half running time.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Amanda's our fraidy cat.
Yeah.
She had to be convinced to watch this by Keith.
He's been working on me for a year to
Yeah.
watch this movie.
So it happened tonight. Let's hear your 2 minutes.
Okay, so the documentary portion I really enjoyed. Mockumentaries are one of my favorite genre of comedies, so totally down for that. And even little things where the character Taylor is like, oh, right, we should get that where I'm saying, okay. And then, she's asking the same question. Those sorts of things. I enjoyed the concept of the retired guy and his wife, who clearly has survived. She's a survival woman.
So in the storyline, he is the guy from Black Christmas that survived.
What?
He's the killer from Black Christmas in 1974.
I never knew that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, like, those characters were funny to me when they're like, oh my god, you have an Ahab! Like, all of that stuff, like, really funny. For me, the slasher part, like, I was really enjoying where they're playing around with the tropes, and like John said, the whole, like, idea of, like, they are calling out the subtext in it and everything like that. And I have studied in a film class some horror movies, much to my chagrin. I was in a body genres class, so, you know, all of those sorts of things I like, where they're calling out, like, well, yeah, obviously it's a cock and it's a phallic symbol and all of that stuff. Like, yeah, there's so much stuff, you know, sexualized and everything like that. But when it did switch from the documentary to the slasher part,
It's where you tapped out.
yeah, I was like,
I don't like it.
like, there were still some touches of humor, but as it went on, it just started, like, becoming more and more straight slasher. So I had to turn away quite a few times, and yep.
There's a surprising small amount of gore in it, for as much as they call it a slasher film.
But it's quality gore.
But it is quality gore. But
They managed to do it without being gratuitous.
They did it without being gratuitous. Like, they could have easily shown the guy's head being squished, and they didn't. So.
Well, I think that might have served a purpose too, though. I mean, for the ambiguity, maybe, you know, maybe getting ahead of ourselves as far as.
And let's not forget the budget, right?
Yeah,
Right,
that's true.
That too.
Keith?
Man, I enjoyed it probably almost as much as I did the first time I saw it. Mm-hmm. I've probably seen it, I don't know, 4 or 5 times, maybe. I don't know. Just I could probably watch it like once, maybe every other year or so, and still just get something out of it. I'm surprised at how well it held up for me. It's just the brilliance of the way that they're already deconstructing it within the mockumentary format, and also doing the, as Amanda was saying, actually talking about real things about the way that people analyze these movies, and but still talking about, like, the lead character Leslie was talking about himself in that framework, and just they also set it within the world as if these other serial killers or the other movie supernatural killers, you know, Jason, Freddy, Jay, who we call, you know, Jason J. Fred and
Eugene
Mike,
called Jason J. Yeah.
Just, and even that raises some questions you would like them to explore, but they don't really get into. It's just the idea of, so those things are real, or were these also people who were somehow doing like sleight of hand magicians or something, like the like a contemporary magician now, as opposed to someone who's actually practicing real magic? Were these people really just tricking everybody?
Well, it made it seem, they said at the beginning, that Freddy was so good at his job that he made them think that he was killing them in their dreams, when he was probably just killing them on the, you know, however he would sneak in, kill them, get back out, and he did such a good job at his thing, killing people, that they realized that they're like, the kids were like, oh, don't fall asleep, that type of thing.
And one of the deleted scenes we watched, he actually dropped a reference to
Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Leatherface. Yeah, it's like, went to Texas, was helping somebody reinvent something. It's nothing. Didn't
Does
no
that
names.
line up with, like, the remake of Texas?
I think
Chainsaw?
05 was the remake of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
And
That'd
this
be very
is
funny.
06. Yeah.
That was 06.
Okay.
This does hold up very well. I was commenting right after the movie that it does not seem like it's an 11-year-old movie.
Yeah.
It actually has aged very well.
So, another one of the things, because I've been on IMDb since the movie finished. One, the girl's name is Carrie that they interview, and I was like, that has to be a reference to Stephen King's Carrie, because she's like, oh gosh, you know, the way she was talking. Also,
in the deleted scene that we watched.
yes,
Okay.
I was thinking that might have been a stretch. Maybe even Stephen King was like, don't do that.
I don't know. So someone
No,
theorized that.
This is me
Okay.
theorizing it.
Yeah.
Thank you for dismissing it, Keith. I appreciate that. It says the first time you see Taylor interviewing Eugene and his wife, They Lament configuration box from Hellraiser is on the table. I missed it. I want to go back and watch it, but I mean, that's bringing in like all of the big.
Well, the Rabbit in Red. There were a lot of nice
lot of
little,
different nods to everything. The guy on Elm Street that was going into the Freddy house is actually the actor that plays Jason Voorhees in the movie.
When he turns
around and he's like, and then of course they mentioned Halloween. But anyway, I'm off track.
Well, there was still something I wanted to say.
Go ahead, Keith.
Well, also just the way that they blend the genre from mockumentary right back into like an actual slasher film. I remember the first time I watched it, I was very surprised. I didn't think they were actually going to do it. They kept kind of teasing at it, and they managed to surprise the way he laid it out again, like a modern day, like a Penn and Teller sort of thing, where here's the way I do all my tricks. Here's how I'm faking them out, but I'm still tricking you at the same time. And suddenly they're in the trick and they didn't realize it, that kind of thing. I thought it was a brilliant transition.
Also a good play on the third act twist that is inherent to all slasher movies. So your third act totally drops the first person perspective in favor of here's the twist. Yep. It's what it should be. I just used air quotes there for that. I was curious.
I enjoyed the film, not as much as Keith does, but that's what makes everything interesting. The spice of life. I don't like everything the same way Keith likes things, and he doesn't like things the same way I like things.
What?
So
I think everything is perfect. It's just
right, Keith. Right.
But there's Marianne. Her point proven.
So, this movie was a groaner for me sometimes. I enjoyed it, but there are parts where I'm just like, it really helps me because you want to root for the bad guy sometimes. At least I do in some of them films, and this actually never had me. I was like, this guy seems pretty cool, and then I never ever switched over to like, I want to see this guy win, because I liked the female character did a good job at keeping her head on. She didn't revert into screaming. They didn't have any weird where she just absolutely has no idea what to do or anything. Where she's always like, okay, here's our plan. What are we going to do next? We got to try and stop his plan, which I thought was great. So yeah, that's I liked it. Not as much as Keith, but that's my it was good. So let's go into what we like, what we didn't like. Were there any flaws? Did people want anything that you didn't like?
Man.
It gets slashery.
That is a big one if you are a fraidy cat.
Yeah.
Amanda said she did look away a few times. So, cause, even for as quality gore as it was not something that Amanda wanted to see. So.
No.
Yeah.
I would honestly have to dig deep to find something I didn't like. Usually I can kind of just go, oh, well, there's this thing they could have done that would have, I don't know. I have to think.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to, if I may, go from something I dislike about it into, again, something, I don't know if that crosses over into but appreciate about the movie.
This is general conversation, so do whatever you want.
Just a good way to direct the,
all right, that's right. So, speaking of it as a homage to these 80s slashers, it really does try and have its cake and eat it too. It tries to be clever while still staying faithful to the material. It does such a good job that I think expanding upon this further into sequel land becomes impossible because it did such an intrinsically good job of making its worn out tropes seem clever. Now, you spoke about your appreciation for the female protagonist here, and what we are presented with is, in true 80s style, a white Protestant Christian all-American hero. She's practical, she's pragmatic, She stands up to perceived threats. She guards her womanhood. She does not do drugs, does not drink. And again, the whole virgin trope, right? Mm-hmm. And then you go into the whole mores of the 1980s slasher films, that anyone who deviates from those paths is punished brutally, swiftly, and often in a way that says it's justified. You root for the slasher for a reason, because they've kind of set you up that he or she, I mean, don't want to be gender biased here, is the dispenser of moral justice, of what is right for us as a society. And that is so ingrained in this movie that to move forward from it is impossible. Because if you think about it, what is the ultimate reward for a woman in Reagan 80 society? And some would say still today, you know what, this still is an expectation today. What is the reward for a woman playing by the rules of society? You get to be part of it, a subservient, submissive part of the society, and you get all the things you need.
I was about to say, your reward is you're boring.
Eugene married a final girl. That underscores that reward system. She was pure and virtuous, and she ran. She married the killer, who we empathize with, who we root for, as the bringer of justice. And you could even translate that into other realms, extrapolate a little bit into economic success with a franchise of movies. You could extrapolate it into virility, because he's still going even at an old age. You know, the slasher is the old white male running society. If you're a good little girl, do as you're told, you get to be the slasher's wife. And it really reinforced it throughout the whole thing. She did as she was told, and she came out strong in the end. Amazing. So no doubt she's going to end up with someone who's going to just, carry her along through society. And that goes into what I admire for its stability and world building, but I don't like about it, because it almost shows it off as something desirable. And again, it makes it impossible to expand upon that story in that world, because anywhere you go from there is going to make that strain a little too much, and it's going to break. Yeah. So it can never be this good again.
I guess I kind of feel like she, as a character, like Taylor, I don't know, like, okay, yeah, I see she's the final girl. I figured out pretty early on that it was going to twist and she was going to be the final girl. But I don't know. I guess I kind of wonder, like, is she actually going to then end up being like Eugene's wife? Or, like, I don't know. I just feel like she's a little bit stronger of a character.
Too much
to fall into that trope in the, like, aftermath.
However, at the end, she was protectively escorted away by two white men.
That's true.
Robert Englund as the Ahab, and her camera guy who, got to
I love
surprise
you.
him not to, yeah, and that's it. He gets to live because he loves virtue.
Well, I mean, maybe even on a less cerebral level than that. And you touched on something that would be a flaw for me, is that they kind of left me wanting more, in the sense of it would be not. They teased the idea of, like, here's how you would set it up to be a sequel or a franchise of some sort, but again, you can't really do it because it's all been sort of burnt in the sense of you couldn't really. I don't know. It would be an interesting challenge, I would say, to recapture the magic of having the mockumentary blend of some sort. Maybe you should do another journalism project or something. What?
So this is what our friend Mike Durst shared with us. Before The Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon, one of 6, it's a comic book that's going to be coming out.
The Return.
Before The Mask, The Return of Leslie Vernon.
Okay, a comic book series. That's...
Well, once again, I mean, who really considers Buffy the comic season?
Right. They called it like season 7 or something.
Yeah, everyone knows it's not really that.
There's season 8, and Joss has been involved, and just saying.
That goes
I read some of it.
But anyway.
Yeah.
But it's a delicious tease, and so it's not really negative so much, really. But it's, I think, as you said, you can't really improve upon it enough to justify it. Maybe I'd probably still watch it anyway because I would want to see what they would do. But
I think the only real option is severe deconstruction of the genre at that point. You've done homage. So how do you turn this thing on its ear? How do you call out? I mean, I guess you could do it, but would it be as satisfying? Would it still be a behind the mask feel of a movie?
Probably not.
I'm going to rub my chin over this.
Well, I mean, in a sense, we saw something like that with Scream, the Scream series. Although, I mean, certainly they didn't do that the best way they possibly could have done it, but at the same time, they hit on some of those points of what would happen if you kept it going for a while. Mm-hmm. Some ups and downs. I mean, it eventually, I think, kind of tied itself up at the end. But
so
still.
in the Scream movies, they, like, the first one is like the slasher, and then the next one, people start like, okay, so I gotta be this person because, don't go in the van or don't do this. They start deconstructing they have one guy that deconstructs the horror film. Go ahead.
Well, I'm sorry. The first one was still the deconstruction within the of what was happening. I can't think of his name right now. It'll come back to me in a minute. They did have the character who was the movie buff, who was leading the audience and the other characters through what's supposed to happen in the situation, sort of like this.
Was that the Green?
No, it's Jamie Kennedy.
There we go.
Yeah.
There we go.
The movie store employee who was leading people through the detective moments, just to sort of, well, here's why you're a suspect. Here's why I'm not a suspect. Here's why everybody's a suspect. We're at this party. We should not behave this way. Like actually telling people this is what's going to happen if you do this. And
yeah, don't go off into the room and have sex because you're the first ones to get it, type of thing.
Which is totally shown in this movie.
Yeah.
Like, that's, you got to start off punishing the people for having sex.
Yeah.
But my point in bringing that up is that the killers in each one of those movies was very self-aware about what they were doing and how they were trying to do it in a way that was to, again, sort of imitate the movies they've been watching and make a joke out of it in some ways, or to try to surpass the images they've seen and try to construct it so people are trapped into these things. So.
Okay. I'm sorry. I feel like I am at a loss on knowing any of the references to horror movies and slasher movies because I cannot watch them.
That's interesting in itself, though, because I'm wondering how many of those references were famous enough that you would still understand what they were getting at, who they were talking about, etc.
I know who Robert
Englund.
Yeah, Englund is, and all of that. And
did you know Freddy when they said Freddy Krueger?
I knew what that was. Yeah,
Mike Myers.
Yeah, I knew Mike Myers is Halloween, and Jason Voorhees is
13th. Yeah.
Okay.
Friday the 13th. Camp Crystal Lake. That was when they started out talking to me.
Yes. So, I got all of that of, okay, those are, the big franchises and all of that stuff. But, you were saying, this thing from Hellraiser was there, or, other stuff. I'm not going to pick up on any of that.
Yeah, we didn't pick up on it either, and I'm a big fan of Hellraiser. That's one of my favorite films.
I think it's a testament to, once again, the thought and care that went into the writing and the execution of this movie, that the beats you could pick up as a casual movie fan. You don't have to be a horror buff to appreciate this. The humor is actually funny, and they actually managed to wring some genuine tension out of the situation. So, craftsmanship-wise, this thing is really just a singular piece of work. I can't think of anything that really kind of you can neatly put against it. Scream comes close, but that's more of a playful messing with the tropes, more of a celebration than a loving homage. I'm having a tough time thinking of any other movies really that go this deep on that many levels into recreating and still playing. I'm using air quotes again. Playing with the genre itself.
I think an older film that is an homage and plays with tropes in a humorous way would be Young Frankenstein.
Oh, yes.
To older, Universal horror movies.
Oh, that's very loving.
Did you watch that one?
Oh, it's my favorite comedy.
Okay, well.
Yeah, Young Frankenstein I love. But I feel like, it has those aspects, but I think it is hard because of the documentary aspect of this movie. It's hard to find something to compare it to in that way.
Which was, which sets up a lot of jokes in ways that, other movies probably wouldn't be able to do. And I thought that was really good. There's something, I was going to say that, I thought it was so well acted and the banter was so well performed that I was just never really distracted enough to pick up on some of those Easter eggs. I'm always just like, focused on what they're saying in their faces and just, I was always just so immersed in what they were doing and how they were doing it that I didn't even think to look at the background most of the time. I've seen it 5 times. I still haven't
So, playing off that, this time when we were watching it, when Leslie Vernon says, "Oh, that's the Virgin," and she's walking and they make eye contact.
Mm-hmm.
Behind him, Keith has seen this 5 times, and there are the 2 girls from Freddy Krueger that are playing
jump rope.
Yeah, the
I didn't
jump
even
rope.
notice it. And you pointed out and just
I did see that.
Yeah, and so that's that 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. That part.
Yeah, you had to point it out, and this is the first time I saw it.
I just was like, why are the little girls dressed like brides?
Yeah, it's their first
rewatching.
communion. Yeah, it's their first communion dress.
I mean, it's not that surprising. I mean, horror has always kind of cannibalized itself for the sake of a laugh here and there. I mean, I'm thinking back to earlier stuff. They sold out with Abbott and Costello meets the Mummy, just using the tropes for laughs.
Yeah.
Even like B-grade. Like, anyone seen Spider Baby?
I don't think so.
No, but I have some friends that do a podcast in the UK, and that was like their first episode was on Spider Baby. It's hilarious.
It is a
nerd on nerd. They're great guys.
Wonderful, wonderful movie. But at one point, Lon Chaney recites his line from The Wolfman. Mm-hmm. And the entire opening theme song is just an homage to dumb horror movies.
Oh, that's hilarious.
But the movie's still pretty straightforward and a good tale. So, I mean, this very much keeps in line with horror's tradition of, I guess, cannibalizing itself and in the goriest ways possible to mine out some good laughs. And,
when you say Spider Baby was wonderful, you're being sarcastic? I don't know.
I love this movie.
Okay.
I absolutely love the movie Spider Baby.
Is it a horror?
It is a horror movie. It stars Lon Chaney, a very young Sid Haig, who
do you
probably
want to
know
do
from
it?
Rob Zombie.
Do you want to do it for a podcast? Okay, let's do it. So if
Yeah,
you're this passionate about it, I definitely want to hear about it.
It is a fun ride.
Sounds like one that's not for Amanda.
It's black and white. It's not too gory. If you roll with it, you'd be
I've already got her on for the cabinet of
Dr. Caligari.
Caligari, yeah. So
Cabin in the Woods. Sorry, I just thought of that.
Yeah,
that's
bring it back, Joss Whedon here too.
As an example, I was thinking like, what would Amanda enjoy if we had to make her watch another horror movie?
No, she would know.
No. I know I could not do Cabin in the Woods.
Yeah, it's way too graphic.
But
I could have told you that immediately.
Cabin in the Woods, as far as movies that are playing and subverting
Definitely.
the genre, that's more a subversion deconstruction versus a loving spoof. Tribute or homage. So I guess that would be the closest one I could put to Leslie Vernon is Cabin in the Woods. It'd be good bookends for that whole little.
Well, especially the bit where they're kind of watching them and even talking, making the kids in the cabin assume the tropes and say that has to be the stoner kid. He has to act like this. This guy has to be the jock, and very much like when Leslie was. Took them to the school on a field trip just to watch them and say, these are the kinds of people you want on the team. That you have to have the supporting cast, etc.
The Mystery Dream Team.
Yeah.
We could go even further with that because Cabin in the Wood taps into something that's definitely present in Behind the Mask is mankind's need for ritual. They explicitly bring out the whole ritual aspect. It is the whole movie is a ritual in Cabin in the Woods. Spoilers.
Guess we have to mention that.
It is a ritual, but in this movie, it is fetishization and ritual of what goes on within the slasher movie.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he
and becoming the bad guy.
He is definitely fetishized.
He's chosen to become the bad guy because that's what he wants. He just like he said, there has to be good people and there's got to be bad people, and they've got to fight, and without bad, there's good. Back and forth.
And you chose podcasting,
right?
And
I was going to say it was sort of like the Joker. His motivations usually, if you the Joker of Batman and DC fame, that Joker.
Spoilers: he fights Batman.
Oh no!
But usually his motivations are to try to. Well, what he states his motivations are to try to show people who they really are, what society really is. to play the counterpoint, as Leslie says, to good.
Yeah.
Setting himself up as a necessary evil for whatever reason he states, but, that's debatable.
Yeah, he's trying to balance out the universe or something, which to me is also just like, that's what every narcissist thinks about themselves, is that they're important, and that's, what this all means somehow.
But it's also been the basis for most, world religions since the days of the Mithras cults, where you're trying to balance good with... But I'm wearing a t-shirt right now that has a drawing of Baphomet. Baphomet, you probably know, is the depiction of the horned devil sitting in the pentagram. Mm-hmm. It was actually something that was made in the late 1800s for a cult that was trying to balance good and light. So
they had t-shirts back then?
They had t-shirts, and I was alive and first in line in the late 1800s. So
you're like, screen printing.
That's right. Yes! Come on now. Woo! Forget this Gutenberg press thing. But once again, it's the cast of opposites is something we keep getting drawn to as far as stories go. See, it's got...
say that word.
I can't read it from here. Poo caca sissy pants.
That's not...
Donkular or something.
That's
something
Acula. That's from Get Out. Coagula. That's this ritual that they do, which is the thing of rebirth.
Right, and then there's man and woman, there's sun and moon and everything, and these are things that, since, like I said, like, you go back to old serpent cults, you go back to Egyptian mythology. That's what it all boils down to, is this symbology, this balance, and Rise of Leslie Vernon is playing with that as well.
Yeah, I still feel like if you're like, I'm balancing out the world by being evil and killing a bunch of people, you've got some issues. Just
maybe.
So noted. All right.
Well,
we'll tell you about my plans for next week then.
Which reminds me, since we're talking about that, of what Marianne was saying before. Something I wanted to talk about is how likable the characters were, especially Leslie and Taylor and her crew. And we kept seeing that happen throughout the movie, where you see it play across her face, which I loved. The idea of her, it almost seemed like they were setting them up to be love interests to each other, Taylor and Leslie. Mm-hmm. And also, there was a sense where they didn't really... It's like they couldn't really accept it was really happening. Like the idea of him actually killing them. They were so far removed from the idea of it. It was all intellectualized for them. And so once it actually started to occur, then you had the moral dilemma, like most journalists would, for many other kinds of things. Not even just something as outlandish as this, but just, I'm following along with a mobster or something like that. What's my responsibility here for
They had already seen him kill someone, though.
Sort of. It wasn't really graphically present.
Which one?
The librarian.
The librarian didn't get killed.
Yeah, it looked like she just sort of fainted.
She fainted when the gunshot happened.
Okay, I thought he did slash down.
The Ahab came in before. Yeah. And so, Zelda Rubinstein, this is her last film.
Oh, she knocked it out of the park.
I love that you hear her voice and you know who it is.
Yes.
Which was funny because I was like, I've always loved her in Teen Witch. He was like, not Poltergeist. I'm like, Keith, have you met me? I don't watch Poltergeist. I watch Teen Witch.
It's like, just the... This house has been claying.
Yeah, very well done. Very well done.
I just love her so much. I mean, I love Poltergeist anyway. That is another movie that has a lot of tragic deaths in it, and it's like it's just a really good movie. And then to have Zelda Rubinstein be in this also. I mean, it's got homages to all these different slasher films. Then to throw in Zelda Rubinstein, and then also one of the things that they mentioned in it was the car was from Evil Dead. Huh. One of the cars is from Evil Dead, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" Even they
had the Raimi-mobile,
something like that. Yeah.
Oh, I see. I've seen part of that movie. Jeremy tried to make me watch it.
Oh no!
When we were first dating, because he said like, "You'll be fine." Then when I was crying in the kitchen, he was like, "Oh, maybe you can't handle this."
Do you know how far you got in it before you...
The first one or the second one?
The first one. Also, well, I then got a phone call from my family that my cat was dying, so I was like...
Never ever...
You have to drive me home so I can say goodbye to my childhood cat.
This movie killed my cat, you bastard!
Yeah, pretty much. And then he was like, "Do you want to try to watch it again?" And I was like, "No."
Don't want more family members to die.
To drag me to hell, then I guess.
No.
Army of Darkness. That's kind of a good intro to.
Yeah, Army of Darkness is better. I mean, that's funny.
Are you familiar with that, or where it falls? Army of Darkness.
I know that it is within the Evil Dead stuff.
Third and final.
I think they did something. No,
well, there was a stinger for Evil Dead the remake, and then there's Ash vs. Evil Dead the series. So who knows how that'll work?
Yeah, now there's Ash versus the Evil Dead.
I watched. How many seasons that have been? 2 seasons.
Two,
I think I watched them both.
I'll just skip it all.
When Leslie takes Taylor and her crew to meet Eugene and his wife, the car parked in Eugene's driveway is the same color, make, model, and as the car seen in Evil Dead in 1981. Yeah. So it might not be the exact same car, but they tried as hard as they could to make it
happen.
Yeah, to make it happen without actually having to borrow the prop from someone.
See, that's just like I guess just not milking your audience, but just ensuring that you hit your target audience. Just like, you know what? We know we got a narrow audience here. Let's really make them happy.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a sign. Like, I may not have seen all of those things because I'm not a horror fan, but I feel like that is a mark of, like you said, you know your audience, and it's for those people in the know, but I am not a fan of horror, and I was still able to enjoy most of this movie. From the I got the broader strokes of what it was doing. I didn't pick up on all the little Easter egg things, but I want to go back for a second to something you said, Keith, about how they were setting it up that Taylor and Leslie as love interests almost that is how I guess part of it, I was like, oh no, she's totally the final girl, because he's always, he's fixated on her and turning things back around to her.
I'll hug you. And then what was the other thing he did? Got offered a beer, and when she declined the beer, he did a.
Oh man!
There's lots of stuff like that, and where he even gets her in on and is really excited to have her be part of the freaking out Kelly in the back alley. Oh well, since you're here, you can pull the fishing line. All of that stuff. I feel on the surface, it's just he's just oh look, this is for the documentary, and here's the behind the mask or whatever. But I was like, oh no, she's totally the actual final girl, and all of this is actually about her.
See, I don't think I picked up on it the first time through. In subsequent times, I was still too busy being entertained by certain aspects to really think about
all of those things along the way.
Well, there's one of the pieces I was missing out on, I think, was the interaction with the older couple. And I need to pay attention next time. I'm going to make myself pay attention to this. The conversations they were having about how's that thing going that you're working on? Were they making it clear that it was going to be Kelly that they were talking about, or was it something else?
Well, because they always mention Kelly in front of her, and they're more vague there. That's why I was like, oh, it's got to actually be her. And then they would say things like, well, she's a real spitfire, and you've got a good girl here and stuff. I'm like, oh, she's totally the final girl.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, it's there's a sense that maybe he's grooming her for something, but not necessarily. I wouldn't have thought that. You would think almost grooming her to be another killer or an accomplice of some sort. But when you think about the relationship that the older couple have, that's almost what she is to him now, or what she is to. What's her name?
Taylor?
No, Eugene's.
Jamie and Eugene?
Jamie, all right.
Yeah.
What Jamie is to her is the way that she is able to talk shop with him about it in a very detached manner. So
they also give away that Jamie was a final girl.
Right.
Yeah.
So
that's what I'm saying, that final, putting those pieces together.
Leslie's final girl, and then I'm sure he'd love to then have her
marry
him, and I don't know. Because even, she asks Taylor as an interview, oh, you love Kelly, don't you? That's what it's all about, or something.
Well, it was almost, was that one of the deleted scenes, or was that in the movie? The loving, you love her, don't you?
That was in the movie.
Okay, yeah. It almost seemed possessive, jealous, the way that she was asking him. She seemed I feel like there's a better word I can use, but jealous pretty much sums it up. The way that her delivery seemed like she was almost like confronting him, like, how dare you like her more than me, or...
No, I picked up on that she was feeling like, you should pay attention to me instead. I'm the person that's been interviewing you this whole time, but little did she know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that kind of ties into, not only is she a final girl, she's also, once again, kind of an audience surrogate.
Yes.
I mean, for the first 2/3 of the movie, she was complicit in all of this, just as we, the audience, are complicit in every horror movie. And so to turn that around, and I guess you could even make an argument for it being a statement that as a viewer of a horror movie, you're asked to make a stand of some sort, whether it to be just finish the movie or think about what has happened. I think it's a little bit of a stretch.
Well,
maybe.
You're a voyeur on these.
Yeah.
You bring me back to that other thing, what I was starting to talk about, the shift that happens, where you have to make that decision. That first scene in that room was everything, where they're in the back room while he was actually starting to do the plan in the other room, where he's actually killing those other two kids. And they're starting to feel a little bit horrified. Like, what are we actually in now? So in other movies where Marianne has mentioned that you sort of root for the slashers, or she does. Some people, I mean, there's some movies where they set up some of the asshole teenagers who are like, you're like, I can't wait for them to die.
Yeah.
And so you have to kind of say, as the audience, the complicitness there is so you're okay with him doing this. So are you in it all the way? Are you okay with him now going after the good people now? Where is that moral line? Shouldn't you be equally outraged by everything that this person does now?
I think they play with that too with the documentary crew, because there are at least 2 times where they go, all right, are we going to stay or are we going to go?
Yep.
Like, there's 2 points. I think one time Leslie asks them that, like, are you staying or are you going to go with me? And then the next time, staying means staying with him instead of behind, or going means leaving this whole thing behind. So it's interesting because stay and go both come up, but their juxtaposition is complete, like, polar opposite the second time around.
Yeah.
See, and it never... And that's the thing. It plays with the idea of moral complicity, but it doesn't drag it out farther than the tropes of the genre, of the slasher genre. Because up to that point, you could have really twisted that third act and turned it really on its ear. But instead, they chose to play by the slasher playbook, beat by beat. So that's another... Yeah, I just...
Well, the amazing thing about that for me... again, coming back to the whole Penn and Teller aspect of it, is, and also what Marianne was saying about why Taylor was such a likable heroine, is because she kept her head throughout the entire thing. They were actually trying to problem solve, like the audience would. Like, it was, you've been watching this whole time. Do you think you could do a better job than these kids in the house?
If I was in this scene, what would I do?
Right.
And I do that all the time. If I'm watching something, I'm like, okay, well, what would I do?
I explained that broken window over there. Oh, I got you.
Yep.
Yeah,
I'm always like...
like, oh, well, here's how it normally goes. And in this case, in the world of the movie, it's, oh, well, this is the plan he's already told us. So how can we mess with that?
And even then, they found that they couldn't, because he was still
playing them.
Yeah. So let's get into...
Sorry, I'm cracking up the mental image of Marianne just like breaking windows, trapping the house. What are you doing? Running drills! I gotta be ready!
So let's do our ratings. We do an entertainment value, and then like a basic IMDb score, 1 through 10. Entertainment value is also 1 through 10. You can also, if you want, I usually just leave this for the scaredy cats of how frightening it was for you, and that's a 1 to 10 score. Seasoned veterans that are horror people won't have a high score. That doesn't mean it's not horror. It just means, it wasn't as scary for us. So why don't you start?
All right. So entertainment value, I gotta go with 10. It's rewatchable. It keeps you going. It's all meat, no filler. Doesn't really lag anywhere. I'm sorry, what was the second part?
The second was your IMDb. If you were going to give this a rate, if you were a critic and you had to go into IMDb and say 1 through 10.
IMDb-wise, I would say 7, because that's more of an everyman score. There are obvious flaws. There are, well, I mean, to a non-horror fan, there are obvious flaws.
In fact, it's a slasher.
When you want
if you're going with like cinematography and so forth, or
if you're going to hold it up to the canon of cinema, it's good, but it's no Citizen Kane. It's it's not Moonlight. It's not anything of that. Speaking to the human condition, it's talking about human decomposition by one guy.
Yeah.
So I'd say about 7 there as far as, I think it's a good mix of technical and entertainment value for the average film goer. And then as far as a horror film goes, I'd put it about 5. It's got some good scares, but it's not gonna scare your socks off, but you will be entertained. That's why I went so high there.
Yeah. Amanda?
Okay. Well, I guess entertainment, for me, it's almost like twofold, because like the documentary aspect of it is definitely like a 10 for me. I love that part. But then it switches to a slasher movie, and then I'm like, oh. So then it's like a 4.5 or a 5 for me, because
that's cool. You can give it 2 scores.
Because there were still some humorous aspects going on, but then it was increasingly becoming where I just had to look away. As far as like, if I were to rate this, I always have to think, because I do letter grades, so then I have to like, switch it out. So I like, for the part, I don't know, kind of averaging it out, I guess. Do you do half stars?
You do half stars.
Okay, sorry. Like 7.5 or something. Like,
good.
Because I would do like a B-, because really like some parts of it, and then other parts
were like
are a little too for me. And then I guess scare factor. I'll see. The last episode that I did with you was The Mummy, and that was not scary.
The new Mummy.
Oh no! You poor people! I didn't realize I was with tragedy survivors. I'm so sorry.
It wasn't that bad, but it wasn't a great movie. But that one I felt was kind of very sort of middle of the road in general. But I guess scare factor, like a 6 or 7, because like I think I'll be okay driving home in the dark.
You should probably turn the lights on. Your headlights.
I will probably be all right. I might have to rethink whether I'm going to finish listening to the true crime podcast I was listening to on the way here or not, or if I'm going to switch over to something a little nerdier.
Hamilton!
Put some drills in your car before you go. Marianne will show you.
Yeah, I'll show you how.
Check your spark plugs.
Yeah, make sure your spark plugs are good.
I might be like calling the husband on the way home.
He'll talk to you the entire way home.
Yeah, and I'll be like, I gotta go. I have things to do. So I guess that's where I am.
Keith?
Well, 10 for entertainment for me, of course. I would have probably given it a higher score for like the IMDb aspect until excuse me, John made the comment. It's hard for me to think of things in that way sometimes. As far as say like a Moonlight, for example. I mean,
but I also feel like this is a completely different movie.
Yeah.
Like
technically that's good, but at the same time, there's the way that this is constructed for me takes it even higher than it would. I mean, it may not be a cinematic masterpiece in that sense. I mean, there are certain things they might not be doing that are supposed to be artistic enough to make, this is so groundbreaking because of that. But for me, the storytelling was so high in that it's got to be at least an 8 for me. Scare-wise, it's hard for me to think back to the way that I felt the first time I watched it. I was still, I think, so invested in the conversational aspect of what was happening, even during the parts that were supposed to start being scary, as far as them actually being the real chase, that I didn't know what was going to happen, but at the same time, I wouldn't say that I was scared about it, so 3 or 4, maybe 5 at the most for that. So, I mean, I guess thinking about how someone might feel if they were a horror fan and just dropped right into that, still probably around there.
So, I'm different when it comes to IMDb score. Going by mine, like Fantastic Beasts is a 10 for me. Maleficent is a 10 for me.
Okay.
So
it's very you-centric, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's
You're what centric?
me-centric.
Oh.
You-centric, as in you-centric, me-centric. So. Now I'm just confusing myself.
And I'm Centric the entertainer.
I literally hadn't heard the word that you said, so now I understand what you're saying. But you got it.
It was worth it, man. It's all good.
So, like, I have, this is going to be horrible when I'm going to rate it as a 9, Man with the Iron Fist. As a 9, because I had good entertainment value.
I was very entertained by it when I first saw that, you know.
So,
oh, you watched Mr. Holmes. I loved that.
That's a good movie.
Do you have like an IMDb account where you're keeping track of everything you
Yes.
watch? I should have done something like that.
So there's no shame. I know I would give The Fat Spy a much higher rating than any human being ever should. And this is like a really bad 60s surf movie where I think Phyllis Diller gets top billing. So when Phyllis Diller's getting top billing in your surf movie, you know something's wrong.
When you put it that way, yes.
So there is no shame here. Personal tastes are personal tastes.
So it's like, well, Phyllis Diller's famous, but oh yes, for surfing, probably not. For being on a beach.
Oh, wait, there's a Jane Mansfield cameo too.
So The Happening got a 5, but I gave it a 9 because I loved it so much. So
Tree-induced suicide is where it's at.
exactly, So what I would do with this Leslie Vernon entertainment value, I would say 6. IMDb score is also a 6. Scare factor was pretty low for me. There's no jump scares in it, which I gets extra props for me.
I did jump more watching Blade Runner 2049 last night than I jumped in this movie.
So, it's not super scary for me. There is a lot of gore in it, so, but that doesn't do anything for me. It has a very low scare factor for me, even when I saw it for the first time last year. So I'd say 3 for the horror factor for me.
I hadn't realized it was that recent. I thought it was longer ago than that you first saw it.
Whenever you first showed it to me, it was like a year or 2 ago. Could have been more longer than that.
Yeah, time flies.
So let's plug things that we want to talk about. Let's start with Amanda.
Okay, I have a couple of podcasts. My main one is Amanda's Picture Show A Go-Go, and its sister podcast is Culture Pop A Go-Go, and we have a website where you can find both of those, amandaagogo.com, and on Twitter, I'm most active on @Amanda'sPicShow.
Cool, and you can buy her cool swag at Threadless.
Yes. AmandaAgogo.threadless.com, and I have like a wonderful tote bag that I take everywhere now because I got it from there and it's awesome.
Nice.
Were any of them designed in the 1800s?
No. Not as cool as
John. No, they were designed by Sam Kent, the awesome designer who also designed Marianne's logo.
My logo. Yes, Marianne's Macabre movie review.
You can find more of his work at samkent.me.
Yes.
Amanda?
Oh.
I'm sorry. Anyway.
This guy's plug, Keith.
That's why I wanted to make sure that everyone understood what she was actually saying, to clarify. Damn it. I don't usually make myself laugh on those. Well, I mean, there's something that I kind of wanted to say that I forgot to mention about the movie itself, which I guess we can edit and put back before this.
We'll put it before this, yes.
All right. Will we talk about what we're saying?
Go,
okay.
Come on.
All right, so it's that for the DVD, which is probably how you're going to be watching this if you're going to watch it at all, The deleted scenes are essential for you to see. I mean, there's certain things I'm surprised we're not actually in the movie itself, like the walk-run demonstration in particular.
That one is my favorite.
They even sort of, there was a point where you thought they were going to jump to it, like during the movie when he's talking about how...
Oh, I got to do a lot of cardio!
Yeah, and... but anyway, I guess we can go to the plugs if you would like.
Yes.
Right now... Yes. Okay. Plugs. What was I talking about? Yes, I do audiobooks occasionally, I guess. With relatively few gaps at the moment now. I'm working on the 5th one right now, which is the first fiction one. It's going to be called Weird Wheat by Suzanne Dome. Supposed to be finished with that the end of November. Hopefully before then. Which means it will probably be out in December, or certainly by the time this is airing.
Yes.
Or airing. Up. Published. I'm also in a monthly live show for Mad Lab, which is, we also podcast. It's All Been Done Radio Hour. Serialized grouping of, or actually a grouping of serialized sketches, which go up probably every week, actually, on
They go up on
Presents.
Sundays.
Yes. And it's all been tracked, and probably a few other things. Also guest appearances on Amanda's things that she mentioned.
Yes.
Occasionally.
And you can hear us on Defenders.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The Defenders
for
podcast.
TV
That is,
Ate My Brain.
yes. John, do you have anything you want to talk about? Anything you're passionate about?
I have nothing to plug, so I'm just going to grab a soapbox and say, remember, because you are a citizen, you are an activist, register and vote.
Very good.
Thank you.
I was hoping you would say something like that. Because I was like, remember Nona? Remember?
I got nothing to talk about. No, I'm all done here. I got Taco Bell.
So we can't get into the homeowner stuff, right?
Hey, if you need a loan, talk to me. But come on.
No, the HOA.
Oh, no.
No. I'm Marianne, and you're listening to my podcast. So hopefully you continue listening to it. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, find us on Facebook at Marianne's Macabre Movie Review, or you can find us on Twitter at Macabre Review, or you can send me an email at Marianne at IABDpresents.com, and don't forget to leave us a review. Thanks.
5-star review.
Oh, yes. If you want, you could give us a 5-star review.
5 or nothing, actually. Thank you.
Thanks,
for
guys.
GTFO.
Bye!